have on the line the NFP spokesperson and the Secretary General, Mr. Canaan Mdlethse. Mr. Mdlethse, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Globe.
Evening, and thank you for having me.
First of all, what's your reaction to the President's address earlier?
We welcome the announcement by the President of the National Freedom Party because it will allow us time and space to campaign freely and to reach as many people as possible. And it's indeed a relief that we're able now to have at least 500 people to speak to, and we appreciate it and welcome the announcement. Although we were, as the National Freedom Party, hoping that the President will at least take the country to level 1, because it's an election time. We want to get as many votes as possible, and having these restrictions prevents us from doing much better. But we welcome the announcement, although we're hoping that we will take the country to a level 1 so that we can do our work freely as the political parties. The election fever is here. People are ready for the election, but still we need to have to engage them, speak to them, conduct door-to-door and rallies so that we can get the message across.
And just taking into cognizance, Mr. Canaan Mdlethse, that campaigning and political campaigning is now well on the cards for most of these political parties. So, is there a plan in place for political parties to ensure that people abide by the lockdown restrictions and as well as take all the non-pharmaceutical preventions to prevent COVID-19 in these rallies?
No, definitely. As the NFP and most probably all other political parties, we will ensure that people do stick to the regulations. People do adhere to all the regulations that are in place, so that our rallies and campaigning do not become super spreader events. But sometimes it might be difficult, considering the fact that you cannot send people away if, for argument's sake, let's say we have a rally in an open stadium and 1,000 people come. How do you then chase some people there and say, no, now we've got enough people, 500 people, so we have to go back? It's going to be difficult, extremely difficult. But we will try by all means to ensure that we follow all the protocols, we adhere to the regulations, and we make sure that even if it's 700 people that turn up, they must wear masks. We'll try by all means to have social distancing and obviously have sanitizers all over. But it might be difficult, I must be honest, but we'll try by our level best.
And the President also mentioned the issue of vaccine passports. We know that vaccine hesitancy is still much of a reality here in South Africa. How would you deal with the vaccine hesitancy amongst your party members who don't want to vaccinate for whatever reason?
We will try to encourage our people to vote to vaccinate, because taking a jab saves lives, and we'll send a message across that all our members must make sure that they vaccinate. But at the same time, we're not going to force them, because I think what is important as the political parties, we must play our role in ensuring that the message that we get through to the people is the proper message, because our people get confused with all these messages from social networks and with all anti-vaccination messages, and it confuses our people. As the National Freedom Party, we make sure that we play our part, because we do not want our members to get COVID-19 or to die of COVID-19 merely because we are conservative. We don't want people to take jabs. We will encourage them to go and vaccinate, and that's the message that we'll be sending through all over our campaigns. We'll be encouraging our people, telling them the truth about the importance of vaccinating.
All right, Mr. Canaan Mdlethse, Secretary General of the National Freedom Party, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, President.
All right, Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana is the Secretary General of the South African Council of Churches. He now joins us via Zoom to express their view on how these pronouncements affect the religious movement going forward. Bishop, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure having you on the Globe this evening. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having us. We appreciate the opportunities.
What's your reaction to the President's address earlier?
Well, I would maybe make 3 quick points. The first one is that the relaxation to level 2 is certainly a most welcome one, away from the restrictions of level 3. But I should say, secondly, that the religious leaders had actually, across the board, all the faiths, had requested for not the number, but a percentage, something like 50% of the space, so that if you've got a 6,000 seater, you can have 2,000 people, 2,500 people, or even 1,000 people, there will be plenty of space for distancing and all that is required for COVID protocols. And so we suspect that the reason why the government tends to give these numbers has to do with the fact that if they set half the space for all gatherings, you might get political parties that are filling half the space of a stadium, which would be huge, a huge rally. And unfortunately, we are not categorized separately from political parties and social gatherings. The third thing I want to say, though, is that even with the small numbers we have committed ourselves, and across all religious faiths, we've got something we call the Religious Forum Against COVID. And what we're doing in this is to drive down the infection rate as best we can and driving up the vaccination campaign. We will continue to do that. In fact, we're using this month of September to say, let's create a heritage of a vaccinated society, which will be launching on the 24th on Heritage Day. So we're not dampened by this, even though we're disappointed that we didn't get the 50%. I know that it's going to be important for all the churches that are having their conventions in September and October, the Jewish community that is having their Yom Kippur and Sukkot in the next 2 weeks, and of course the Hindu community that is going to be having Diwali in November. So we are looking to making those occasions come at a time when most of our vaccinations have happened. We're saying that every congregation must vaccinate 7 out of 10 people, 7 out of 10 people, and every church, mosque, and every faith community that wants to participate, please, this is our time. Let's make it possible so that our people can eat, can live, because the economy will open up. And that's what we call, in Jesus' terms, taking care of the weightier matters of the law. That is mercy and faith, as well as the ability to make a living.
Now, I understand, Bishop Mpumlwana, that there are those big churches which attract a high number of congregants who vow to defy some of these lockdown restrictions and allow more members to enter their churches. So, as a council, as a mother body of these churches, what measures will be imposed on them?
Let's just be clear. The SACC is not a mother body of churches. It is simply an association of those churches that have chosen to associate together in the South African Council of Churches. There are many other similar formations. And the SACC churches most definitely will abide by the regulations. And in fact, we have got our own what we call norms and standards for managing churches that go right down to how you manage the collection plate in a COVID compliant way. We've done that, and our regulations are actually stricter than government's. But we know that a lot of other church communities, regardless of which association they go into, will do the right thing in this regard. There are large churches in the SACC, like the International Fellowship of Christian Churches, which includes the Grace Bible Churches, Rhema Churches. These are very large churches, the Apostolic Faith Mission. All of them are struggling very hard to make sure that they live within these conditions. And this is why the appeals are made to government in a civil way. So I don't expect that there has to be a tension between one type of church or the other, because all of us have got small and big churches across the board. And every effort we're making right now is to say, whatever the size of your church, if you do the best you can to make sure there's greater vaccination, the chances are that the country will go down, in fact, to level 1. And in fact, we might be able to save the festive and the Christmas festivities.
And I heard you earlier on, Bishop, encouraging, so many of your congregants and the general populace to get vaccinated so that we all achieve herd immunity here in South Africa. I'm not sure whether that is your personal position or that of the Council of Churches, but on the issue of vaccine hesitancy and, so many fake stories doing the rounds about vaccines, so many people are making biblical references to the issue of vaccines, that these are the end times, and this is a manifestation of what is in the Bible with regards to this vaccination. So what's your position to that? The link of the biblical references to what's being said on social media in particular about vaccinations.
Let's start off by saying that Jesus himself said no one ever knows the end time. So no one here, I can't say to you when the end time is. Jesus said when they asked him, they said, not even the angels know the end time. So nobody can actually tell you this is the end time, not at all. And this has happened in the last 2,000 years. There have been so many end time predictions, including the year 2000. So I think let's put that one aside.
Okay.
Secondly, the South African Council of Churches, actually, what I'm saying, I'm speaking specifically on behalf of the Council of Churches because we are committed, and we're saying that, yes, one of the most important things that we can do is to worship on Sunday. But we also know that if Christ would walk into our township tomorrow, he wouldn't be clapping hands in our congregations in the morning. He would probably be out there looking out for people that are in need. And that's what he calls the weightier matters of the law. The law requires us to worship, but the weightier matters of the law are that we should make sure that people live. And he says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. For this reason, the SACC heads of churches appointed a specific task team of theologians and medical people to actually go into all these myths about vaccines. And we produced a document, and we did have a press briefing in February on all these things that actually debunked all these myths, including the religious myths about vaccines. So we are not apologetic about the fact that there are only two ways to save lives against this. It is the non-pharmaceutical measures of masks, distance, as well as the hand hygiene and ventilation. The second one is vaccination, so that you can have enough people to reduce as well as to prevent the further escalation of more variants. We need that, not only for our health, not only to save lives, but also to save livelihoods and make sure that this country can, in fact, feed its people and the future generations.
And for the clergy that are still adamant that, that are linking the religious myths to COVID-19, any punitive measures that will be imposed on those? Because at the end of the day, COVID-19 kills, and it kills anyone who gets infected with COVID-19, regardless of one's religious affiliations.
The SACC is an association of churches. It is not a regulatory body. It does not provide any punitive measures on anybody. We operate by persuading people to do the right thing, by informing, by educating. And this is the reason why we have provided, we're part of a collective of information. In fact, we've got the Religious Forum Against COVID. That includes Muslims, Jews, Ababa Shembe, the Zayoni, various churches, charismatics, and we all come together to educate. And we use education. We've got communication officers that meet every Tuesday to prepare education information material. That's what we're doing. We are not punitive. We're simply saying, be rational. Accept that life is more important than what I myself personally want to have achieved.
All right, Bishop Mpumlwana, lovely chatting to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.